Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming to the meeting. Tonight is going to be, I think, an interesting meeting. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Guild and what's happening as far as our CNC training and our CNC initiative at the Guild. We're also going to just have our normal little show and tell for showing anything that you've made that's interesting, and that will be fun. And we're also going to have Dave is going to give us a little presentation on at least one, if not maybe a couple different ways to do inlays. So hopefully this will be an interesting meeting for everyone. I am in my car and my phone is about at 30%, so I may end up aborting in the middle since my battery is a little low. But if I do, maybe Rich can take over the helm at the meeting. So with that, why don't we go ahead and have just introductions, and if everybody can just come on and give a little blurb on what kinds of things they do, what kind of machine that you might have, and just what your interest is in CNC woodworking. I'm Craig Jones. I have a Legacy Maverick, which is one of the machines that will be arriving one of these days, probably sometime in October, to the Guild. And it's a 3x5 machine, but it also has a turning center, and it has a vertical vise, which allows us to do a lot of dovetails and various different types of joinery. I do basically a fair amount of just little projects. Nothing. It's not a production business by any stretch, because that gets way too much like a job. And I had a job, and at this point, being retired, I don't want another one. So I just do things that seem fun. So Rich, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I'm Rich Bader. Been a member of the Guild about a year. I just started my second CNC project. This isn't show and tell time, so I'll save that for a little while. And I'm also trying to help with getting some of the CNC training programs together. So working with Dave, Craig, and Vince.
Great.
And I've got an Avid CNC machine that I put together myself. It's 2x2 benchtop. Got it with a base. It's my intention to add vertical work holding so I can do some joinery on it. And it turns out I'm not all that interested in making signs, so I'm kind of challenging myself with other little ideas. I'll show you one of them later.
Great. I don't have a list of who's on the call, so somebody else just go ahead and join in.
Tracy, knock me out.
Oh, okay. Tracy Whalen. I am a member of the Guild, as well as obviously the SIG. I have a Pacific Tooling 6012, which is basically a 2x4 machine from China, which means you have to do a lot of stuff to maintain it and everything else, but it's a very solid machine. I use Vectric V-Carb Pro, and I do mostly artwork is my thing. So that's it.
Yes, she does. Dave, I see you'll fill out my top row. Why don't you say hi?
Hi.
Oh,
I
Dave's.
do not own a CNC yet. I'm here basically to glean knowledge from the collective experience of the group.
What intrigues you about CNC?
The precision of it, and being an embedded systems engineer, the challenge of potentially writing my own code.
Interesting. I'll tell you, in addition to assembling my Avid machine, I built my own controller. I used a Centroid Acorn board and a Gecko stepper and a little mini PC, and got to do the systems integration project. So kind of building a dedicated embedded machine. It was a satisfying project.
Yep.
It runs its own CAM and machine control software. Centroid has a version, so I don't run mine. I run something that comes with that.
Well, that's the kind of things that intrigue me, and having been embedded for 35 years now, it's just something to challenge me in a new direction.
Fun. I don't mean to dominate, but I'll tell you that I moved out to Oregon in '78 to join Intel to be the product manager for an 8086 based single board computer.
Yeah, well, I cut my embedded on a Rockwell AIM 65, so
Excellent.
same vintage.
Excellent. Have you seen the Rockwell Retro Encabulator video?
No, I have not.
Oh, you have to go. So all you geeks, you got to write this down. It's the best thing ever. Rockwell, it's the Rockwell Instrument Company and all that, and aerospace. But there's a thing called the Retro Encabulator, and if you Google Rockwell Retro Encabulator, you'll find the video. It's got 100 million hits, and enjoy yourself.
I'll have to. I remember booting mine with a paper tape.
Yeah, now we're talking. I did PDP-11s at Digital Equipment with paper tape.
Yep, PDP-11s was what I learned assembly on.
Nice. Okay. Welcome. Dave number 2. Dave Smith, say hi.
Hi, Dave Smith. I'm back at the Guild after a 6-year hiatus in Texas. Joined originally in 2011 and had a CNC up here and another one in Texas. The last one was also a legacy Maverick. Don't have, well, I do actually. I bought a small one. Most of my work can be done within a 12 by 20 footprint. Some of it requires larger systems. So I bought a little long mill 12 by 30 that I'm going to assemble. Probably not to the extent that Rich did, but it'll be fun. Most of my projects are in and around making classic custom wooden board games for people, and other various and sundry things that happen. So I'm looking forward to many more years of this stuff.
How long you been doing CNC, Dave?
2011 years.
Yeah. That's when we're still using PDP-11s to control the machines.
Back in those days, speeds and feeds were a total mystery. You had to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And I always did it the wrong way. I actually built a fire on the bed of my first legacy system using too much speed and too little feed.
Gotta let the smoke out once in a while.
Yeah.
Yep.
Huh. Okay. Tom McCloskey.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Tom McCloskey. Rich, you're talking about tape-controlled CNC. That's how I got started in CNC. I used to sell machine tools, and that was 1971. That was quite a few years ago.
Huh.
And it was just coming out and really hitting the factory floors then. And they were all tape-fed, and they were a mystery to me. But I was always intrigued by them. I've never done any CNC myself. My main reason for being here with the SIG is I'm curious, but also want to make sure you people have board support. For those of you who don't know, I'm on the board. I'm the treasurer of the guild. And I'm interested. I don't want a CNC right now, but who knows? I may get talked into it.
So thanks for being the treasurer. What kind of woodworking do you do?
I'm really involved in toy build, and everybody says when you start out woodworking, you go through your box making phase. I've never gotten out of it. I love to make boxes, and there's just so many variations, and I like doing that. So basically, I'm a box builder.
Huh. Very cool. I have an interest in boxes myself. I got to take Michael Cohen's class.
Oh, yeah.
And Pekovich's class. And so that's my two box making experiences so far.
Yeah, they're good.
Thanks to the guild. It's been a great introduction.
You know, Tom, as an incentive, you know, if you're making boxes, the CNC is great for adding accents.
Yep.
That's my next project right now, Tracy, is I'm just making boxes, and I figure when I get to about 100 of them sitting on my bench, I'll start decorating the tops and the sides and start working on that. So that's my next one. I already know how to make boxes, and I'm enjoying that. So I'm going to push myself to decorate them a little bit.
Fun. Do you have a particular style? Bandsaw boxes, organic, something?
I got one. I started it about, I guess, 5 or 6 months ago. It's just a cube, a square. You make a mitered box with the sides mitered. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I said, what happened if you mitered the tops too? So now most of my boxes, there are top, bottom, and the 4 sides. They're all mitered on 4 sides. So they all fit together. And then I cut the top off and I use a wooden hinge, a wooden dowel for the hinge. So it's invisible. You look at it and you think you have a cube of wood or a square of wood, chunk of wood, and tell people it's a box. They say, no, it doesn't open. Yeah, it does. And you open it up for them and it's kind of cool. So,
Very cool.
and you may have seen them around. We had some at the Multnomah Days, and there were some at the Gathering of the Guilds. But I've been making those for quite a while now, and I love the simplicity of that one.
Lovely. Sounds great. Thanks for the introduction.
Thank you.
Yep.
Chet, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Chet Wetherall. I met Craig and Dave at similar times when I started my CNC journey 8 or 9 years ago. I ended up buying a Laguna CNC with a 2x3 bed, and I've made many different things on it. Before that, I worked really hard on establishing myself as a good woodworker with solid traditional techniques, and mostly using power tools, but I love hand tools as well. All of that led to me becoming a high school woodshop teacher. So currently I am teaching at Battleground High School, just north of y'all. And I love CNC work at the school. We have a Legacy Maverick 3x5 and focusing on teaching the students a lot of proper tool use, safe tool use, get some new woodworkers into the system. And then the advanced kids are working on more traditional techniques like mortise and tenon joinery and things like that.
Wow.
Hey, Chet,
meeting the legendary Chet.
Sorry, Rich, what was that?
I said I'm honored to finally be meeting the legendary Chet.
Chet, I'm not sure it's wise to be doing a video that might go public and to show your Laguna as basically being used for storage for bits of wood.
Well, it's during the school year, Dave. I'm not actively working. I actually have a lot on there, as you can see behind me. I am currently in the process of building a set of collapsible chairs for excuse me, for and with my daughter's boyfriend's dad.
Okay.
He saw the combination of the chair that I was making. It's a bit like an Adirondack chair, but it's just one big arch, and the back the seat slides into the back. You guys have probably seen similar variations. He saw that, tested it at our 4th of July party and loved it. And he's like, I want to make some. So I told him what lumber to buy, and I started teaching him how to do it. So he's got some supplies back here ready to build some chairs. He
All right.
just need to be assembled.
Hey, Chet, what software are you using at school?
Yeah, at the school we use VCarve Pro. On mine,
Okay.
at my shop, I've always used Aspire.
Okay. For the VCarve, is that the maker version from Vectric, or do you have each of the students using their own fully licensed version?
We have VCarve Pro on the grounds in the school, and the kids can access VCarve Pro Maker version when we get into the class. They can study at home if they so choose. Some of them are less enthused than others. You know, I think that as adults, when we want to conquer something, and I suppose it's not too much different for kids, but we go for it, right? We dig in and we learn and learn and learn. But a student who is in the class, maybe by choice, maybe by that's where they put me type of thing, they tend to be less enthusiastic, a little bit on the verge of lazy.
Okay, thanks. We may call on you we're figuring on putting a maker version of the VCarve Pro at the shop.
Yeah,
And
their little fee per year is so worth it.
it's, yeah, $100 is just nothing basically. So, okay, well, thank you. Have we got anybody else who has not introduced themselves yet?
Vince has not, and Greg, to my knowledge, has not.
Mark hasn't either.
Pardon me, Mark's sitting right in the middle of my screen. Go, Mark.
My name's Mark. I have a 2 foot by 3 foot CNC router, Franken router. It was made by the Chinese. I've done a lot of work to get it running, and it still has a lot of work to do on it. A lot of things are not exactly the way I'd like them to be. Lately, I've been using it for reproducing bits of architectural woodwork on my house. I live in a house which is 115 years old. And whenever you turn around and want to work on something, you find another thing which is rotted. And invariably, they're the things which had a lot of handwork that went into them originally. So I've been entering a lot of those things into CAD. In most cases, there's something which is being replicated many times on the house. So you enter it into CAD, and then the CNC router is the perfect tool to make, in one case, a dozen of them, in another case, 200 of them.
Thanks.
So yeah, it's a wonderful tool for reproducing things and doing the same thing over and over again, or minor variations of the same thing. For software, I use Autodesk's Fusion 360. And that has both the design and the CAM modules in it. So you're able to do everything and simulate the cutting with the machine all in the one tool. So.
Great, Mark. When you make these things for the house, 200 of them, does the Chinese machine engrave "not made in China"?
Good on, Dave.
What kind of improvements are you have you made, and do you want to make on your machine?
One of the projects that I'm doing, it's a I think it was intended as a benchtop machine, but it would take a pretty big bench for a 2 foot by 3 foot machine. So it's currently sitting on a top that I've made out of 2x4s and plywood that's sitting on sawhorses. And I'm in the process of building a new base for it with drawers for bits and tools and clamps and stuff like that. The electronics on it need help. They work, so I'm leaving them as is. But the drive for all of the steppers is a homebrew thing that somebody did. It's driven by the parallel port off of a Windows machine that's running XP. So
Yeah, good luck.
That's how mine works, but I'm a little embarrassed to admit it, but that's how the Acorn board talks to the stepper drivers.
okay. So those things are something which I want to clean up, but what I have now works. It has an unfortunate step in the process where I have to take the G code, load it onto a thumb drive and move it across to the machine to drive. So it would be nice if everything worked without needing the sneaker net.
Right. No network in the house to put everything up on?
There's a network, it just doesn't run on the XP machine.
Yeah, I had to upgrade a machine on my CNC router because I couldn't load a network driver on it for the USB thumb drive, USB network control, wireless network thing. So
yeah, that's a project. One day I'll sit down and work on getting the XP networking to talk to my network.
well, the problem I had is that it had a parallel port interface to the controller card,
Okay.
and there was no parallel port on the new computer I installed. So then I tried using, what do you call it? I bought 2 different PCI Express parallel port cards that I could plug into it, and neither of them would work either. So finally, I ended up pulling the controller out and putting in a smooth stepper. It's a USB controller card, and that's worked fairly nicely.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it is.
moving forward, I'd like to build a wooden clock. I've got it in CAD. It just needs to be turned into wood.
A wooden
Does
clock.
it say all of the gears? That's perfect for CNC.
Yes, yeah, it looks ideal. And when I entered it into the CAD, I was doing it with the thought that it would eventually be done by a CNC machine. So hopefully I haven't gone too far astray with the design.
Did you design the clock yourself?
I took an existing design and modified it for the tools that I had.
So I think that we should have clock night at one of the upcoming SIG meetings. Steve McGowan has joined us. He knows a little bit about clocks. Steve, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, I have a CNC router, and then I was making various things on it, mostly a wide variety of cutting boards, and I was just experimenting with doing interesting patterns on it. And but I've always been interested in the clocks and watches, and so I ended up picking up a 3D printer, and so I've been using that a lot for making my projects. And but I've been I got fascinated with these $1 million watches that have these tourbillons in them that spin around. So I started making. Hang on a second. I gotta finish this one of these days, but this is the latest one I made, and what do you call it? If I gotta go this way. If I put some torque on it, I always forget which way it goes. How about this? I got another one. So this one I printed using iron filament. And then I aged it and rusted it. So the balance wheel is out of copper filament, so it's oxidized, and then basically shows the thing here. But if I grab it and I twist it, it starts to tick. And there's a escapement on, the balance wheel on either side. And then in the center, there's a, I don't know if you can see it here.
Yep.
There's a differential that's used to distribute the torque between the two sides as you twist on it. So anyway, but actually, you know what? If I can share the screen, I can show you a lot better.
I was gonna say, Steve, I'm gonna need to talk to you. I got a grandfather clock that needs to be resurrected.
No, well, I'm also a member of the the local chapter of the American or the National Watch and Clock Collectors Association, or Association of Watch and Clock Collectors. And there's a lot of guys there that really are good at, repairing clocks and, or, know where to get it done. So I know I've repaired a bunch of watches, but I've never actually, I've fixed a few clocks for friends, but I haven't done a huge amount of that. So, but anyway, let me share my screen.
Hey, Steve, can I interrupt for a minute?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Boy, it'd be really cool if you could bring those to one of our monthly meetings for show and tell. That would be really amazing.
The thing I want to show you, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so this design, where is it here? I gotta get down to it. I did quite a while ago, and there's probably been about 30,000 downloads of it, of the, because I make the files available for free, and I give it 30 pages of instructions, and then someone can basically buy the screws and the hardware and the ball bearings and put it together. So I did this one, quite a while ago. And then, but what happened is that this guy from France contacted me, and he wanted to make one out of wood. So I basically sent him, he started basically just taking the STL files for the plastic. And in most cases, those were sufficient. But then he, there are a couple pieces like this part here, I can print as a single part, this frame. And he had to, basically assembly. And so, because he used a CNC router to cut out the bottom and the, the braces here, and then he turned the top and then fit it all together. And he, I worked, it took a, couple months, probably 6 months for him to do this, but he turned all the brass screws. And I mean, I was really impressed with, the work that this kid did. Actually, not kid, he's got a couple of older kids anyway, but, and then he did stuff where he cut the escape wheel out of wood, and it just wasn't accurate enough. So he went back and redid it in brass. And he also took all the large gears and segmented them so he could basically control the grain on the teeth, so they're all pointing out. But he actually turned these screws as well. So I was really impressed with the guy. And so finally he got it working. And this is, there's a motor down below that just puts torque on this lower frame here and just twists it around. And I don't know if you can you hear anything? It's ticking away there. And but anyway, so he sent me this video a while back, and he doesn't have any social media presence. So I've been posting it for him. And, but what do you call it? Basically, I'm happy if I get 100 hits on something, and he's gotten over 1,000 on this thing. So, but, and so he sort of got me going now, because I thought, well, I can translate, I worked with him on doing all the translation, from plastic to wood. And so I thought it'd be sort of interesting to try to, do that. Here, this is the latest one that I've been working on, and it's different in a couple of ways. One of them is, oh, sorry, let me hit the wrong button here. This frame here is normally a frame, but this is actually the balance wheel, and the whole thing, goes back and forth. The guy who designed it wanted to have a lot of activity in it. And then the other thing is that this ring around here is the escape wheel, but it's actually an escape ring. And so it's called a Potter movement, which makes it a, I've been really having a hard time finding any information on it. So I've been, basically trying to reverse engineer it from scratch. given my Henry B. Freed watch escapement design book, which it basically has all the little sketches in it for being able to do the the various figure out all the angles and how things fit together. But I did get this thing basically assembled to the point where I was able to animate it, and this is what it's going to look like.
Huh.
And and this one I was looking at it, and it wouldn't be too bad to translate to wood. I mean, it's tricky, but anyway. But so this is the latest one I've been working on. But I haven't actually. I've just started printing the parts for it, and there's
We really ought to, Steve, we really ought to have you do a little more formal something.
okay. Well, all right. Well, I mean, I've done several of these things. I've done just some clocks, and this one here is this is a $250,000 watch, and I just made a giant clock of it that can go on the wall, and it basically has a cam in it that causes it to spring back, and then right up here, there's a Geneva gear mechanism that causes the thing to roll over so it's in position for the next, if it's 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And so this is, they came out with a new model that had glow in the dark, luminescent hands and everything. So I printed it with glow in the dark filaments, and then I put a ring of LEDs around it. And they're really painful to wire. So I just went ahead and made these new parts, and this has a strip of ultraviolet LEDs in it. And so you just really just push it in with your finger and you're done, rather than, spending about 4 hours on either side, wiring up all those little LEDs individually, which is really painful. So somebody online asked me for it, and and then at one of the clock meetings, I did do a presentation where I brought in several of, or basically a bunch of the things that I've made over time. This one here, I've never published. I just sort of made it, and it's, I could never figure out how to get the drive mechanism to work. I mean, basically you can turn it, and it's got Mercury and Venus, and the moon spins around, and it's always, the white side always faces the sun, and the earth has the tilt, and it I forget what the name they call that, but anyway, that stays in the right orientation as it goes around the sun. So it's got about 70 gears in it. So I ended up, if you like gears, you gotta. But then these are just some of the things. These are other watches that I try to make a model of. And this thing here is it's got these little hands, and behind it, there's a set of cams that every minute, another one of these flips down into position. And at the end of the hour, they all flip back. And so I think, so these are the prototypes I was putting together for various ways of assembling it. And then these are the little springs that cause them to flip back. And then there's the reset arm that swings around. And anyway, but this is what the original watch looked like. And so anyway, but
How long you been doing this, Steve?
oh, probably about 6 years, maybe.
Mm.
But anyway, my son talked me into doing this web page, and I put that together. But in any case, more recently, actually, what happened was that this guy had made one of my models and posted a thing on YouTube on it, and so. And then, he posted one, I follow him. So he posted one where he just made his own, he's doing his own design. And I said, well, so when are the files available? I want to make one of those. And he says, oh, it's still buggy, So, and then he sent me to this other guy, and it's a wall clock that's about, this tall, and, with a pendulum. And it apparently keeps very accurate time, and it's got an 8-day weight on it. And you print the whole thing. So I'm actually printing that right now and I was going to assemble it and see what it looked like. But, a lot of the 3D printed clocks will translate fairly straightforwardly to, what do you call it?
You can see.
CNC. So in any case,
Cool.
yeah, I'd be happy to do that if people are, it's off target though, but
Well,
I'd be more than willing to.
another guy that seems interested, right, Mark?
Yeah, Mark's, you're muted.
Yes, yeah, it looks like a fun thing to play with.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, the nice thing about the 3D printing is that you don't have to do any jigs, right? I mean, you just set it up and it automatically generates all the support, material that you need to hold the part in position for the printing. And so, for me, it ends up, I can generate all the parts after I get a design done in a week. And if I were to do that by, a subtractive technique of, making it out of wood, it would take, many weeks. So
Right.
I need this instant gratification. So
One of the other
Turning.
tools that I have is a laser machine that
Yeah,
I
okay.
can cut wood with, and that all is for something which is 2D. It works nicely.
Well, I picked up one of those, and actually Craig Jones has it right now. But my current plan is to I've done this sketch. It's hard to see, but basically it's a
The face for a cuckoo clock.
yeah, you're right, exactly. So what I was thinking is that I've done a bunch of carvings, and when I do the carvings, you carve away the pattern.
Mhm.
And so the idea is that to take the laser engraver, which is just a fancy wood burner, and then slip the piece of wood underneath it, run the program to draw this picture on it, right? Start carving. And when it gets bad enough, I stick it back in again, just run the program again and refresh the drawing at other depths. But I really would like to try to do some, do more hand carving. And so, so in any case, I lent my laser engraver to Craig, and I think he's a tough time getting it working. So I'm going to see if I can get it back from him. and anyway, but I really like to make a cuckoo clock, but I'd like to make it, and what I was thinking there was to a couple of other ideas is that it may be easier for me to make a clay model of it. And we just got a really nice 3D scanner at work. And so I could scan it and generate a STL file that then can go into VCarve, which would then let me just hog out 90% of it. And I just do the finish work on it.
Yep.
And stuff. But I need a good 3D model to start with, though. Or if anybody has a really nice, Black Forest clock that's, highly detailed and carved, I'm getting my new computer that I need to run the scanner like next month. And I want to basically take this thing and scan someone's clock and see if I can turn that into a file, so in any case, that's
Very
sort
cool.
of,
Does anybody have any experience using CNC to do roughouts for hand carving? I've read that it's a thing. I don't know anybody that's done it.
well, I did it. Hang on a second here. Let me show you here. Share again. So right here, what I did is that, let me get to see, I use this pattern. Hang on. Sorry, wrong button. I generated this pattern on my computer, and I feed this in. It's just a single level
We're not
pattern.
seeing your screen.
Oh, you aren't? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's weird.
You stopped sharing.
Oh, I click on the screen I want to share, but I forget to hit the share button down below. So anyway, I created this pattern. And, you know, the nice thing about using the computer is I can do, you know, a segment of it, mirror it, and then, you know, replicate it in a circle, right? So, you know, I could just do a slice of it. And so I did that. And then what I did was I took the result and hand carved the weave into all the pieces after I hogged out, you know, the whole thing. And I just used it took about 5 hours to cut out with a 1/32 inch bit. And it was only, you know, basically, maybe an 1/8 inch deep that I did. And then, you know, I just took my knives and I just, you know, added the weave to it. And the first time I did it, I didn't have any, you know, I eyeballed the edges because you know, this thing goes across here. And so the next time I did it, I actually put a single 1/32 inch wide groove everywhere where I needed to go down. And then that gave me a really nice edge that I could basically carve right up to. And so it really cleaned up the look of the carving by doing that. And, you know, it was sort of painful because there's, you know, lots of edges. And so it took, you know, a couple of nights to add them all. But this was the end result. And it came out very nicely, I thought. And, you know, it's a simple design and it's, you know, not particularly, you know, complicated carving. But so then I decided I would like to try to do something more than that. And then, so these are some of the, you know, I made this pattern and, you know, again, I just do a segment of it and then I replicate it. And then this is the resulting, basically, I lived over in England for a while and they had these little breadboards you could get at sales. And you know, they're all normally hand carved. I got a half dozen of them that I picked up when I was over there. And when I got the CNC router, I thought, oh, it'd be sort of fun to make those. And so I just, you know, went online and picked patterns that I liked and made, you know, models of them. And I think this one was actually a pattern for a tattoo for somebody. So, and then, but I've done, I guess that's all that's here, but I've done other ones. This is an experiment I was doing where I was trying to do I found an 1850s bellows, fireplace bellows, and it was all hand carved. Oh, I think here, I got a picture of it. No, I don't. Anyway, so I did this as separate G-code files. One of them to hog the G part out, one to hog this part out, another one to drive the you know, the 90-degree V-bit around the edges to, you know, to put the chomper on it. And and so this is an early one where I just, you know, I'd cut the depth, but I hadn't cut the chomper yet. And then this is when I cut the chomper. And the only problem is I only have a tiny CNC router. So this one is 14 inches long and my router can only do 10. So I had it, you know, the handle isn't cut on this thing. And I added little alignment pins. You can see one there. So I could take the whole thing and move it 6 inches. So I could cut the other end of the board and still have it aligned. But trying to think of if I did any. I did this thing here where I basically I thought I had the pictures of the other part. Oh yeah, here. So I just routed out these two things, and what I did was I used this with a 1/32 bit. I used this with a 1/16 bit, which made the letters a little undersized, which then I could flip them over and just press them right in, and they fit. I tried doing them both the same size, you know, both the same size bit, and that didn't work at all. And so then once I did that, I just glued them together, and I just put the thing on the belt sander and ground it away, which basically gave me, you know, this is a result. But I also used the CNC router to cut out the whole inside and the inside of the cap, everything else too. So this is, you know,
we're gonna learn about inlays tonight. Dave Smith is going to go through a little program on how to do it. So this will be something that will be interesting tonight.
Great, I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you very much, Steve. This is really intriguing, and I think we're going to need to get together and come up with a little class maybe that you could do for the carving or pre-carving. So that may be of interest to a number of the guild members. So
Okay,
that would be really interesting.
I don't know, after seeing all this, I'm humbled. I don't want to do it tonight. That was beautiful work, Steve.
Yeah. Well,
well, I mean, everything is just sort of like, I just experiment and trying to figure out whether I can do something or not. I just like, I really like, I'm looking forward to trying to use the laser engraver to do the drawings and then being able to sketch it. But then I think I am going to take the trouble to at least for any punch through that goes all the way through the wood. I was going to, I picked up some 4-inch long 1/4-inch bits. And so, and I've got a piece of boxwood that's 2.5 inches thick. So I want to be able to basically hog out the whole thing to, not only give me a point of reference for my carving, but also to establish, to basically get rid of all the material that's, is doesn't exist on, at all. So anyway.
Where'd you find the long bits?
I was digging around on, what do you call it? Amazon.
Huh.
Yeah, just 4-inch long, 1/4-inch bits. I can get you the reference to them if you're interested.
Curious.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I think there's one more introduction that we haven't heard.
I think Vince needs to introduce himself.
Yeah, I think that's Greg.
Have we heard from Greg?
I don't think
No,
so.
there's 2 people.
Yeah, Greg and Vince both.
Greg and Vince.
Okay, I'll real quick. Speaking of old computers, in the 70s, I was making laboratory computers out of TTL chips and we were using Intel's early 4K bit chips and 16K, when 16K bit chips, memory chips came out, that was wonderful. But yeah, so after a life of developing software, I've retired, have a computer, a woodworking business, and been in the guild since 2005. I bought a 3x5 Maverick 2 years ago, and I have a business with lots of cabinets, tables, various kinds of furniture, and try to use the CNC as much as possible. I'm getting to the point that a very large percentage of what I do, I managed to do on the CNC. I also wrote software extensions for Recarve to cut 9 different kinds of dovetail joints. And I have that on sale on my website for $100. That's all. I'm working with Rich and Craig and Dave on the CNC program at the Guild and working on 2 classes, the operations and safety class and the beginning toolpath generation class with VCarve. So, okay, Greg.
I've been in the guild for a little over a year, and I don't own a CNC, but I have access to a Velux CNC that's got a 4x5 foot bed, and it runs on Mach 3 mill, and then everything I've done in Fusion 360. So one of the reasons for joining the SIG is I'm kind of interested in maybe getting a license on VCarve. And so, so far I've done a lot of different shaped cutting boards. Last Christmas, I did a whole bunch of ones that were this shape of the state the people lived in. So Washington, Oregon, Iowa, Missouri, Minnesota. And then I've done some cutting boards where I routed out a shape and filled it in with epoxy. So that's most of what I've done so far.
Sounds like fun. Craig, are you there?
Are we ready for our class that for Dave to wow us with inlays?
No.
What? Oh, come on.
I was gonna say,
Sure.
Dave, don't be intimidated. You do wonderful work too.
You do, you really do. I'm impressed. Also, I just posted the link for the bits, the Amazon for the long bits. They're cheap. They're like, $13 for a pair, 2-inch and a 3-inch.
Good.
Thank you.
I'm having some difficulty with the lighting on my video. I'm reflecting all the bright light here, but I don't suppose my picture is going to matter much.
Can you,
Okay.
If you sit back a little bit, it's better.
or if you turn on more light behind you.
Yep.
Oh, I could do that. Hey Siri, tall lamp on. There we go. That helped a little bit.
That's better.
Yeah,
You don't look quite
it's
like
not trying to front like you.
Okay. Let's see, let's do this. Share. And.
Not the porn, Dave.
No, this is-
Yeah,
well,
yeah. There we go. Wait a minute, wait a minute.
You're going too fast, Dave.
I'm at the wrong end. Okay. Well, went through it a couple of times. Thank you for sticking with us here. There are dozens of ways to do inlays, and I have been doing a number of them on the CNC for a number of years. And I'm going to basically just kind of show you some examples, and then we'll talk a little bit about the different types that can be done on the CNC, and we'll go from there. One of the things that I do is cribbage boards. And in this case, the tracks and the Pelican and Moon are inlays. The Moon is a vertical sided circle. The Pelican is a V-carve, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Get a lot of requests from people, Steve, like somebody was saying earlier. I'm from Hawaii. I would love to have a cribbage board with Oahu on it. So I do inlays of things like that. We get lovebirds that want, the hearts together. I made 3 for people from University of Saskatchewan, and this is apparently their logo. Here's another case. One of the designs, does the hearts, diamonds, spades, and clubs inlaid, and then some engraving again with the tracks inlaid. Also do inlaid backgammon points. In this case, I use vertical side instead of V-carve because when I actually put the playing surface together, the back is open, so I can tap the point into the shape from the back to get it nice and tight. Oh, here we go. Nice and tight down here where it really counts. Right in that area there. So we do a lot of that.
That looks really hard to do.
It's not, it's actually quite easy. The first one was hard to do, but it got easier after that. And here are some examples of people who've done inlays for various things, inlay patterns. They find a pattern they like you do, Steve. They replicate it or spin it around, and then they cut the various components out of it with different woods. Here's a guy who makes cutting boards. He's got a website and a lot of YouTube videos, but this is roughly 14 by 19 end grain walnut with an inlaid, probably in maple and cherry, that he did on his CNC. Here's another one. I really like this. It's just very simple and very attractive. A lot of his customers, when they get their board, say, I don't want to cut on it. I'm going to hang it on the wall instead. This next one is going to absolutely blow your mind. That is a 15 by 17 or 15 by 19 cutting board. Again, end grain walnut with cherry and maple inlays. The most complicated inlay I've ever seen, and it's the most complicated inlay he's ever done. He's got 1,700 different inlays in this thing. And then sort of starting up here, there's the board in process with the walnut. He cuts the pockets for the inlays a section at a time, and he puts them in, cleans them up, and then does another section and another section. And he does that for a couple of reasons. One, it's easier to manage, and two, he can use different types of wood for the inlay, and they interlace and just gorgeous work. See, also here is the material he's using for the inlay. His inlays are about a ½ inch deep, and you can see it going to work over here. He's using I think Tracy said she thought it was a 3.5 mil tapered round nose. But he's cutting out the various inlaid pieces that will then go in. He floods it with glue over here. He fits the pieces in down here, and he whaps them with a rubber mallet to get them in nice and tight. And then when it dries, he lets it dry overnight. Now when it dries, he uses an end mill to slice off the top to get it really close down to the main wood. And then he just sands the heck out of it and oils it. It's just beautiful work.
You did say a ½ inch deep inlay, right?
Yes. I don't imagine he thinks his clients are going to wear through all that wood, but that's what he does.
Wow.
There are hundreds of different ways of doing inlays, but the ones I've done mostly are string inlays, the vertical wall inlays, and V-carve inlays, and that's what we're going to talk about here.
I just posted a link to the YouTube video of him making that.
Yeah.
He gets into all the details. It's pretty impressive.
It's a fascinating video. String inlays is basically you cut a groove and you fill it with something. You fill it with wood, you fill it with mother of pearl, you fill it with something, and use a lot on furniture and jewelry boxes and instruments. I forgot the actual term, architecture or something like that. But a lot of people do this by hand, and beautifully so, obviously, but it's also quite amenable for CNC work. Vertical wall inlays, we see, oh, come on, my mouse is having a little sport with me here. You see these sort of butterfly things for pulling pieces of wood together. Looks like they got some either other wood or some epoxy in there. You can cut a a star and then cut these pieces. You can almost do it on a saw. There's the backgammon board again. Here's some more line inlays. Here's a vertical wall. You can see what he did is he has this socket he's created probably with a router and chisel, and then this inlay piece. It doesn't look like he cut it. It looks like he assembled it out of components. And in a situation like that, you want to build the inlay before you cut the socket, because you can always adjust the socket by cutting away a little more wood. It's harder to do if you do it with the inlay. Now we get to V-carve inlays on the CNC, which is what I do most of. The walls of the pocket and the inlay are angled, typically 60, 90 degrees. They're not vertical. And you have to use the same bit for both the pocket and the inlay, because if not, there's some variances in the bits that will cause you to have visible seams that you don't want to have. And speaking of bits, here's an array of bits. This bunch here are what are called V-bits, because when they carve into the wood, they cut a V groove, if you will, in the wood. The one on these on the left are typically used for deeper inlays. That's why we saw the picture of that cutting board being done with a tapered ball nose. The smaller the angle of the point, the deeper you want to make your cut, or vice versa. And here you can actually see it in use. There's the bit right there. For what I do, I stick almost exclusively to the 60 and 90 degree bits. These up here work fine if the depth of your inlay is 0.2 of an inch or less in the case of the 60 degree, and about 0.14, 0.15 on the 90 degree bit. If you need to go deeper than that, you have to go to the 1/2 inch or the 3/4 inch bits to accommodate it. And then this is my workhorse. Almost everything I do with V-carve inlays is 0.2 or less in depth. So I use the 60 degree 1/4 inch bit for that. Okay, using a V-bit to cut a pocket and inlay. Fundamentally, what you want to do is, there's your inlay, there's your pocket, and ultimately this thing has to go down like that. And you would say, wow, that's a perfect inlay. And the fact is, it is not. The reason it is not is because when you go to put glue in the pocket to stick the inlay in there, you're going to create a gap in the bottom. You know, the old thing about liquids not liking to be compressed. So invariably, what's going to happen is going to be a gap in the bottom because of the glue, and that's going to create a gap here and here, and in fact, all the way around your inlay, which is butt ugly. So what we need to do is we need to figure out how to make the inlay the appropriate size for the socket you want to make. So here's a case where it's sized to fit perfectly. So you've got a gap in the bottom. Oh, let me go back one, just another argument against this kind of an approach. Whoopsie, I mean more. Another argument for this kind of an approach is, senior moment, I don't know what I was going to say. But anyway, here is sort of an ideal scenario. You've got a gap in the bottom for glue. The sides fit nicely to one another, both having been cut with that 60 degree bit. And once you get the glue in there and you press it down, you get a nice clean seal. Right here is where you want it, all the way around your inlay. Okay, let me just, I'm going to switch over to VCarve for a moment, I think.
I think I remember what your senior moment was about. This one stands a little proud, where the other one is the ability to clean it up.
That wasn't it, but yeah, you typically want the inlay to stand proud. That's the way you level the whole thing out. You will notice something here though, like with the tracks on my cribbage boards, if you sand them too much, the width of the track gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And the 3 tracks in the middle track is much wider than the 2 on the outside. So you have to sort of play it cautiously in that process. Let me come out of that for a minute. Okay, and bring this up. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make a very simple test pocket and test inlay using this shape here on both the socket and the inlay. That's sort of the target. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, you're going to be doing much more complicated inlays, but this is just to demonstrate how we identify and create the inlay to fit the socket appropriately. So first thing I want to do is come over here and I'm going to make a pocket and calculate it and preview it. Oopsie. Let's look at it from the top. So here's your pocket. Could be any shape, doesn't really matter. I just happen to make it rectangular for the purposes of this. And the other thing I want to do is take a slice of that because we're going to look at the end of it. So I'm just going to eliminate all this other stuff. Oh, stop it. Oh. It knows what it's doing. I don't. So here's sort of a cross section of that pocket. And we'll be using this to show the various inlays that we've created to go with it. Then I'm also going to go over here and create the inlay. Now, in the case of the pocket, the V-carve cuts ends between the lines. So in this case, it cut inside of the line, the box that we had there. Over here, you're making an inlay. So you have to create, there's the box. You're going to cut the slope on the outside of the box, but you need another bounding box here to allow you to create that inlay. So I just took a box a little bit bigger, about a ½ inch, and put it around there. And I'm going to create an inlay with that. Preview it. And now you can see there's the inlay, and all of the rest of this I'm going to discard. And the way I do that is I go in and do cut through the rest of the wood, and there's the inlay. Okay, and as before, I'm going to create a cross section of it so that we can see how they fit together. And I'm doing that for a number of things, but this is the we're doing here. Let me pull this over a bit. There we go. So if I look at the details of carving this, the inlay is going to be 3/10 of an inch deep. The start depth using Aspire V-carve, I'm going to start at 0. I'm going to use the 60-degree bit. And when I calculate that, it will give me this shape. On the socket over here, I also made it 3/10 of an inch deep. That's my standard depth that I'm using in this particular case. So I've created those. I'm going to take them back over to PowerPoint where we can fit them all together. Okay. So there's our socket, a section of our socket. And I'm going to create 4 of them because we're going to do 4 samples of this. And the first one we cut was using the inlay at 3/10 of an inch. Back here it is. So it was 3/10 of an inch flat depth for both the socket and the inlay. And you notice that it just doesn't fit. The reason is that using V-carve, you're cutting right along this line. So in the case of the socket, you're cutting inside the line. In the case of the inlay, you're cutting on the outside of the line, and it's not going to fit. So, and it's to figure out what it takes to make it fit. So let's do the next one. In this case, we said, okay, we're going to do a start depth of 2 inches. That means we're going to go 2/10 of an inch. We're going to go down 2/10 of an inch before we start cutting the actual inlay. And we'll cut an additional 1/10 of an inch. This moves the boundary of the box in and allows it to fit inside the socket. And it gives us a little bit of a gap down here for the blue. It looks like a pretty nice fitting one. We've done, I did a couple more just to show you how other people have done. This is called the 3-2-1 approach. Here's one, which is the 5-to-1. Start depth is 1/4 of an inch, and the flat depth is 50 thousandths of an inch. You see, I have a little bit less of a gap. And one character actually does a 9-to-1, so that his gap down here is very, very small. And the only real advantage of that is you have more surface area here to bind the inlay to the socket. The one I use typically is this, somewhere between 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 for almost all of my work. Hello. Oh, all right. And last of all, I want to go back to Aspire here for just a quick second. Here it is. On that first cribbage board, we had the pelican and typically when you're doing a V-carve inlay, you want to create the, let me just bring the moon back up here. You want to create the inlay first and then adjust the pocket accordingly in scenarios like this. So what I did in the case of the moon is I used a vertical wall inlay for the moon rather than V-carve. And the reason for that is the pelican inlay overlaps the edges of the moon, and I didn't want to have 2 vertical walls with a gap at the bottom that somehow weakened the placement. So I had to cut fairly carefully to do this. Here's the male inlay for this. I'll just calculate it, preview it. And I'm literally cutting all the way through. It's a 3/4 of an inch thick disc. That would be the moon. Of course, it would be a different colored wood. And then if I go over to the pocket side and cut that, I'm going to calculate it and preview it. And I've created a 1/4 of an inch depth so you can see that the disc might fit in. Now, again, where the outer boundary of the pocket and the disc might not quite fit together. You have to learn to experiment based on your bits in your system.
Dave, pardon me for interrupting for a moment. Can I ask the other participants to mute their mics? I'm getting some background noise from somebody. I suspect I'm not the only one.
Yeah, go ahead and ask them.
Thank you. I think I did.
Oh, all right.
That worked. Thank you.
Yep, I appreciate it. Thank you. So if you find you need to make an adjustment, if you've made the inlay first, you can come over here and you can do what they call a pocket allowance, right here. So unfortunately, I cut it first. So I'm going to show you what it looks like in case it doesn't fit. If I go back over to the two-dimensional and look at that. You see that it was right to the bounds of the circle that we created. But if I need to make the pocket a little bit bigger, I can go in and do this pocket allowance. I'll do a 2/100th of an inch, calculate that and preview it. You notice it gets a little bit bigger here. And you can see over here that if I pull it way up, it's about 2/100th of an inch outside of the bounds of the circle. So you can make the pocket a little bit bigger and you can sort of creep up to a fit with the vertical wall, especially on simple shapes. You don't want to do that on a complicated shape because you'll adjust it in one place and mess it up somewhere else. Okay. So I've got the moon in, I've sanded it down. And it looks a little bit like that. So now I want to go back and do the pelican. And again, I want to cut the inlay first. Let me get rid of the moon. And you'll notice something about the pelican. It's backwards. Obviously because you have to take the pieces and you have to fold them together to make the inlay. And it seems duh, that's a no-brainer. I can't tell you how many times I've done it wrong. Just for some reason, I managed to put it together and think, oh no, I didn't reverse the artwork. And it's just a simple thing in VCarve, just switch it to the horizontal. Okay, so once you've got your shape that you're going to carve, you also have to build that boundary around it, because remember, it's going to cut in between the shape and the outside. And so we'll do the pelican inlay, calculate it, and preview it. Okay, there's the pelican inlay that's going to go into the socket, and I'm going to cut around it. So there it is. And then if I go back over to making the pocket for it, I just use the inlay, again using VCarve. I'm making it 2/10 of an inch deep. I'm using the 60-degree bit. No offset required. Calculate it and preview it. There's the socket for it. Pelican will snap right into it. And when you're all done, whoops. There we go. It'll look a little bit like this. Yep. There we go. Any questions?
It's very cool. Makes it look so easy.
It is.
You know, Dave, I loved your presentation. That was amazing. Very well thought out. Good job.
Did you use the VCarve feature to generate the vector diagram around the outside of the bird? You know what I mean? Because there's a way of taking an image and saying, you know, give me the outline.
Yes, there is. So if I go over here, what I did is I brought in a bitmap of the bird.
Oh, okay.
Here it is.
So Dave,
And if I'll just create a new layer, just for the heck of it, and I'll work on that. I come over here and I select the bird, and I select this little feather looking thing here. And I can do it in colors, or I can do it in black and white. In this case, it's just the black and white. And it's not letting me select it for some reason. Oh. All right.
Double click the sheet.
There we go.
There we go.
Now I can select it. I come up here and make it black and white, do a preview of it. You can see the line going around it and apply it. And then I pull the bitmap back out. Oh, I did it on the bitmap layer, but
Is that available in VCarve and Aspire, that feature?
yes, yes. And it's actually pretty good, unless you have a really ratty bitmap to begin with, and then it starts throwing in all kinds of little rectangles and things that you got to clean up.
Okay.
If I have found that if VCarve or Aspire don't work well enough, as Dave was saying, some images are just a little bit draggy. If they're too pixelated or a low pixel count, a really good way to do it is to import it into Inkscape and do your trace there. Inkscape does a really great job of it, and it's a free software that anybody can use. Takes a touch to get used to, a little bit more than this, but it works really great.
Thank you. That's good to know.
So Dave, when you cut the socket, you cut it all with the same V-carve bit, or you use a clearance bit?
Yes. Oh, I see what you're saying. It depends on how much clearance you need. In this case, I just did it with the 60-degree bit, but obviously that takes a lot longer to do. If you have a lot of clearance area, you know, if I did this with a circle instead of a shape that looked a little like it. There we go. So that's only a ½ an inch, and you know, I can do that all with a V-carve bit. But if I made this a lot bigger than that, say I made it an inch. Like that, then what I would want to do is I would want to do the V-carve around the bird and the outside, and then clear all this out with an end mill. Good question. All right.
Have you found any, particular width of that border that is better than others, or does it matter much?
It depends. If you're going to try to saw it with a bandsaw to get rid of all this excessive wood out here, you want to make it a little bit bigger. But I usually just cut through with an 1/8 inch end mill to reveal just the inlay.
Gotcha.
I don't need it to be very big.
When you do the clearance approach, can you get VCarve to automatically to do the two together, or do you have to expand it, offset, and figure out whether the clearance bit's going to start and all that?
Got it. Good question. Well, let's just do it. I've got my two shapes here. I'm going to create a new VCarve. I have the 60-degree bit already defined, and I'm going to do a clearance tool. In this case, let's be generous. Let's use a 1/4 inch, a big one. Here, select it and calculate. And what I'm going to get out of that is I'm going to get out two tool paths. I'm going to get this one, which is the outline done with a VCarve bit, goes around the outside of the clearance area and the bird. And then I also have the end mill clearing area right there. And if I preview just this one, oops, previewed the wrong one. If I preview just this one, there's the clearance area, and you see sort of the rough bird, and then you come back and you preview this one on top of it, and you get the inlay. And then you can cut that bandsaw anywhere. Is that what you meant?
Great, thanks.
All right.
Cool.
Thank you for being patient with me.
So you use this for basically most of your, I mean, this technique for besides the cribbage boards, but for also the game boards you do, or not so much the backgammon, but the other ones, the
Scrabble board.
yeah.
Actually, what I do for the Scrabble board, for the premium spots, I carve them. Now I carve them on my laser, but for a while it wasn't working. So I carved them on the CNC, and I just make the inserts out of 16th inch material that I have stained, and then I carve through the stain, so I don't have to do any filling in with acrylic or anything like that. And then I just stick them into the appropriate places that I've made a 16th inch deeper than the others with trophy tape. And they go right in. So basically use the V-carve when someone wants an inlay in the middle, they want some sort of a special shape. I've inlaid the word whatever-opoly, usually it's the person's last name, like Smithopoly or what have you. And I put that across the board. Technically, I'm not allowed to put Monopoly on there, so. Funny story, I called the makers of Scrabble early on. When I started making these boards, I said, can I get a license to make a custom Scrabble board? And the person I spoke to in their whatever department handles that said, you can't afford a license to make Scrabble boards. I said, oh. He said, but tell me, how many do you make a year? And I told him, it's probably less than 30. And he said, well, I never said this to you, and I'll deny it if you say I did. You're too small. We wouldn't waste our time coming after you. You shouldn't be doing it. Shame on you. But one way around it would be, okay, you can sell a box Scrabble board with every board that you sell and claim yours as an accessory. And lots of people make accessories. So
How much is a Scrabble set? No, the game.
$750.
That's nothing, really, compared to the cost of you making that board.
Well, I started out at $450, and I've been raising my prices over the years. And it hasn't throttled back the demand at all. Just amazing.
$450?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was 11 years ago. But now my base price is $750. I wanted to keep it low. I don't want it to be out of reach for most people.
Yeah.
But it's gotten to the point where the cost of wood is such and my time is such. I've had companies call me and say, can you make us 100 Monopoly boards? And I said, you don't want me to make you 100 Monopoly boards. I said, why not? I said, because they're $1,500 a piece. They said, yeah, so what? I said, so you want to do a $150,000 contract for Monopoly boards? They said, yes. And I said, well, I'm not a production shop. I build one off, sometimes two. 100 of them is not something I want to do.
That might also get you into the, what do you call it? The trademark
Yeah.
radar.
Get that, could do that. I also had a contract with Gulfstream that they wanted to deliver a board with every plane. And they had me make it out of the materials that they use for the internals of their plane. So that you can imagine the sidewalls are all done with veneers and things like that. The problem was their veneers came with about an 1/8 inch backing on it. That's how they make the sidewalls nice and stiff. And it was too thick for making a backgammon board or what have you. So what I had to do is I had to run it through the drum sander and sand the backing off. So I had just the veneer left. It was paper thin to make the boards.
Fun challenges.
All righty.
Do you make the pieces for the Monopoly game, or you do ship with a game with it with those other pieces?
Oh, you mean the tokens?
Yeah.
No, I've been telling myself I should get a 3D printer so I could do that. It's kind of like making chess pieces on a CNC. You know, you can turn them,
Right.
but the amount of time it takes to do 64 chess pieces is such that I'd have to charge an exorbitant price for it. And doing the little tokens on a CNC or laser just didn't make sense. So I just buy a bag of tokens and throw it in there.
Yeah. Okay.
I make the chips for the backgammon, you know, with a little dimple in it and round it over on the edges. In fact, the way I
You turn
round
them
it,
or cut them?
pardon me,
You turn them or cut them?
I cut them. I don't turn them. I tried turning them, but once you slice it and all that sort of thing, getting it to stay stable to put the little dimple in it is kind of hard.
Right.
So I just do a machine at a time, and I use the double-sided tape to hold it down, put the dimple in, and cut it around. And I can round over the top edge, but no matter how careful I am, if I flip that puppy over and try to round over the bottom, it just is a little bit off. So I have to round it over on a router table. And the way I do it, the guild won't let me do. The way I did it on my own router table is I literally held the chip with my fingers and ran it around the edge of the round over bit. Never hit myself, never became close. But if I were to do that in the guild, I'd be thrown out in a hot second.
I bet you could make a jig that fits that disc that goes right over your router bit on your CNC and then just twist it inside that jig.
Good idea.
For this thing here, for the clock face,
Yeah.
I routed that out, and then what I did was that I had to route a cavity in here for the
Right.
you know, for the quartz movement, and so I just got a scrap of wood, and I routed out this shape in the scrap of wood, and I drilled a hole through it, so I could push it up, and so this thing just pressed right down into it, nice and tight. And I was able to slip it under there and just cut out the back. And then, by, pressing through that hole, I could pop it back out again.
Right.
And, and so you might consider doing something like that with the, for the round pieces. I mean, you just have a plate with, 16 of them on it or whatever, and just press them in and just, put the dimple in, use a jig to hold them basically. And as long as there's a hole in the back, you can pop them out really easily without damaging them. So just a thought.
Yep. Thank you.
It appears.
Rich,
Pardon me. It appears
take
that.
control of your meeting.
Yeah. Well, it's Craig's meeting, but he appears to have disappeared, as far
I
as I
think
can see.
his phone battery was dying, wasn't it?
Yes, I suspect that that's what's happened. I'm familiar with the agenda, and we still have 15 remaining minutes. First, we should all thank Dave. Let's give Dave a round of applause. Even if
Absolutely.
he can see us applauding.
Yay.
Thank you so much, Dave. Appreciate that very much. With the remaining time, I propose we do show and tell.
Yes, absolutely.
You guys got some shows and tells?
I've got a handful of inlays, some of which have been inspired by Dave and the great work that he's done. I wouldn't mind showing if I can share a screen.
Sure. Dave, you'll have to unshare your screen, please.
No,
I said please.
you created a monster here. I'm trying to get my screen back is what I'm trying to do. So you're now sharing. Oh, here we go. Maybe that'll stop share. There we go. Good. I'm done.
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm gonna actually, this is my school computer that I show the kids pictures of my own work on. So what you'll see, some of which will be a part of my family. I'm not opposed to you guys seeing my family for a moment or two. Go big. There we go. This is my family. And there's a really small inlay that ended up being about the total breadth from end to end rather of that paw is less than 5 inches. It looks really intricate, but like Dave was saying with the CNC, the most intricate things are possible, and your inlays can be really deceptively intriguing.
How many pieces are in there?
It's literally just one piece of maple that, like I said, it's less than the size of my hand. One piece of maple and one piece of black walnut was all I used. When you cut off the top, it ends up being multiple pieces, but it was not multiple pieces to start.
Huh.
I just finished, I was telling Craig about this on my way home from work. I was commissioned to do this sword case this summer. It's actually not exactly an inlay. It's a CNC cut pockets with epoxy infill. And then I cut and etched the brass with my CNC. So it's got a story of the gentleman who was awarded this samurai sword from World War II. He was a fighter pilot. And there it is without the sword in it. This board here is one of the ones that Dave inspired with his work with both the flat side inlay and V-carve inlay. That big H in the middle was a flat-sided inlay.
Yep.
And the other parts are V-carve inlays. That allows you to get the H in there and then go straight away to carving the V-carve inlays right after that's put in place. He described the process so well, I'm not going to bother trying to say it. I also make cribbage boards. Matter of fact, the very first thing I showed Dave when I met him was a cribbage board I made by hand. Took me 2.5 weeks or something like that to make. My wife and I still play on it, by the way, Dave.
Nice.
And he said, man, if you can make that on the CNC, you're going to make a bunch of money. And I've made it on the CNC once, and it proved to be really, 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 really tough. So I've switched to less intricate designs than that one. And now I do more artistic inlays in them.
What made it so tough?
Yeah.
Oh, what made it so complicated was every segment of 5 points was an individual piece of 3 different wood species.
Oh,
Are you talking about the Hazen board?
No, the one that I had shown you way, way back when we first met in your home and
Right. Okay.
I'd made that by hand. It's upstairs, but I don't have it handy or a picture of it. This one here happens to be one of the first big commission boards I got. And I do some, you can't say I sold that one, boards just for fun. That one there, the little word or name long on the top, the L is less than a 1/2 inch tall. You can do intricate things with inlays. It's just blow your mind. There's a close up of the 3D carving. That's a whole bunch of different images, 3D models in a spire all joined together in one picture.
That's nice.
And then this one here, I did 2 summers ago. The lady wanted the sun and the moon, and she wanted the tip of the moon to end up right on the skunk line on the bottom. So she had it really particular what she wanted, and I made it happen. I used yellow heart and maple for the inlay, and then everything else is black walnut. I designed the tray for the cards and the pegs. That was something I was inspired to design when I'd seen a picture in a Rockler magazine of a cribbage board with a tray. So I battled until I got that design figured out down pat. It takes a little bit of hand tool work and a lot of CNC work. And it takes a good bit of effort to get the bottoms of those pockets so nice and smooth that you don't have to sand them.
Yep.
This one, a little Jesus on a cross inlay. That one took, wait a minute, Oh, someone shared that file with me. That one was really pretty simple because it was pre-designed. So all I had to do was create the inlay tool paths for it, like Dave demonstrated.
Beautiful.
To make my biggest seller prior to me teaching is military display and retirement boxes. For some people call them shadow boxes. This one happens to be fire, but I do a lot of military. This is for Linden Fire way up north in Washington. There's the box. You can see it's just over 3 feet wide. Each of the red parts are bloodwood and the other is black walnut. And then I made a full circle out of bloodwood with bentwood lamination for the back to hold all the display all the awards.
Beautiful.
That's quite a piece.
Thank you. Inlays. This hen inlay is a huge hit. The eye is less than 3/30 seconds in width total. Oh, there's more of my family, my girls.
I'm not sure we're seeing what you're.
Yeah, the screen didn't scroll.
Oh, maybe it's taken a second to catch up. Has it caught up yet?
No,
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 Where are we at?
we're on the original screen there with your family up in the left-hand corner and the fire department down the right.
All right, let's see here. I'm going to hit stop share and then I'll start share again.
Sure.
How's that?
There we go.
Okay.
now we
This
see.
little cutting board, the eye of the hen is less than or right at 3/30 seconds of an inch. The interesting part about that is that's just the maple showing through the Paduke. It's not
Mhm.
an inlay itself.
How'd you do that? Was that with V-carve or no?
Yep.
Aspire or V-carve.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, a V cutting bit is what I was
you,
thinking.
you can see I used a 90-degree V-bit for this one, and the inlay is less than 1/8 of an inch deep because there's not much need
Right.
for more than that. There's my girls climbing. We went up to Mount St. Helens a couple summers ago. And my wife, my dog. Hold on a second. Let me get out of this. I think that might be the end of my pictures, but let me work pictures. Let's see. Oh, here's a couple more I would like to show if you don't mind listening for a tiny bit more to me.
Sure.
All right, so this it's not exactly an inlay, but it took inlaying to get it done to an extent. The maple and cherry are inlaid, and then I carved all of the 3D carving for that that emblem. They call it the crab. It's an explosive ordnance disposal insignia for the military.
Nice.
I said one of my things is military items, and I make and sell awards display cases or shadow boxes.
Just so you know, we're still seeing the gallery. We're not seeing the
Oh no,
photo.
gosh. Let me try
Yeah,
one.
that's weird. I wonder what's going on there.
You know, it might just be internet connection. I am down in my basement because my workshop's down there. Let me try this. How did that load up?
There we go.
there it is.
There we go. I'm sorry for that.
Oh, it looks great.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So like I said, I had to put the maple and the cherry in there and then do the carving. So that took quite a bit in my head of getting all the pieces cut apart in the software so that I could then get the right depths and get it glued in and then 3D carve it. The crab, the insignia of their emblem is about 16 inches wide.
So you carved the leaves on the CNC.
Yes, sir. Every part of that was the insignia was carved on the CNC.
Wow.
The box joints on the end were done on the end of my CNC. The Laguna has the ability to cut out over the end.
Yeah.
So I can clamp things to the end of it, just like you can with the Legacy Mavericks. And that gives me the ability to make box joints, dovetails, whatever I need, like I think Vince was talking about. Let's see if we can scroll a couple more pictures here. You guys can tell me if it works or not. Did that work?
Yep.
Okay, that's the Chief Master Sergeant from the Air Force down in Georgia that received that gift.
Hmm.
his retirement. This one is a sheep. A customer asked me for a particular breed of sheep. I cannot remember the name of it. Maybe one of you knows it. Merle? I can't remember. Anyway, so I found an image of it and did some tracing and made the inlay. And that, I think, makes everybody laugh. That one was a retirement gift for a colonel who his girlfriend wanted it for his man cave. All right, I'm going to stop bragging and sharing now and let you guys go ahead and do your thing.
Very cool.
Thank
Jeff.
you.
Thanks so much. You bet.
Well, you know, I can't say anything, but you're welcome. And thanks, Dave, for all the inspiration you gave me when I first started. It was really great to meet someone like you when I was beginning.
Amazing how much you've accomplished in that short period of time.
Thank you.
And teaching it.
I spent a lot of time as a stay-at-home dad, perfecting my woodworking skills and then starting my own woodworking business to add on to the woodworking skills I had. And then after my kids were all in or almost done with high school, I started teaching.
Well, you may have heard it mentioned, we're hoping to tap into some of your expertise as we put together the courses for the Guild.
Absolutely.
I would be glad to give a hand when I can. I was telling Craig, like I said, he and I chatted on my way home from work today. I just signed up for 2 classes, which are going to keep me busy 2 nights out of every week after I teach school. So my family time being precious to me. This school year may not be the year to do that, but coming next summer and a little bit beyond that, I might be able to. Or if you guys meet on a weekend or something, I might be able to squeeze it in.
Okay. Even if you just helped us review some curriculum or something like that, that'd be a great help.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. Cool.
The least I can do is say I'm not available right now. I mean, when you ask at the time, I'd be glad to offer opinions nonetheless.
Great. Great. Thanks. Who else has show and tell?
You do.
I do. How did you? Oh yeah, I do. So, like I said, I'm relatively new to the CNC world, and I've taken on an ambitious project. I wanted to do 3D two-sided carving. I've got some young friends. They just celebrated their 2nd wedding anniversary. Their wedding was a COVID thing with not a lot of folks, so this was their event, and I wanted to make something for them. And so I found a cube basically of Purple Heart and wanted to carve a heart out of it and put their names on it and the date. So I found a 3D model on the internet, sucked it into Aspire, put it in the material. One of the big learnings for me was how to do the 2-sided alignment stuff. I don't know if you've done 2-sided machining, but one of the tricks is to make sure that when you flip the workpiece over, that whatever you carve on the back is properly aligned with what you carve on the front.
It's ironic that Popular Woodworking just had an article on how to do that.
No kidding.
This last episode or
Was
last.
was that the 2-dowel approach?
Yeah, the $2 approach.
Yep.
Which 2-dowel approach? Is it the symmetrical 2-dowel approach or the asymmetrical 2-dowel approach? I'm not being a smartass. There actually are 2 different approaches.
This was symmetrical. We had them in opposite corners.
Okay. So mine, I'll show it to you. It's going to look a little symmetrical, but it's actually the asymmetrical type. And one of the advantages of the asymmetrical type is you don't have to drill holes all the way through your workpiece into the spoil board. You do have to drill into the spoil board, but you don't have to drill all the way through the part. And because my part was 2 inches thick, I had to I did a bunch of research on how do I drill holes all the way through. One of the reasons I was interested in, Steve, in your 4-inch router bits, because everything I read says don't use a drill bit. Anyway, I didn't go down that path. I went down the asymmetrical path, which means you basically drill, if you've got 1-inch pins, you drill a 1/2-inch hole in the backside of your workpiece, and you drill a 1/2-inch holes that match into your spoil board, and you drop the pins or dowels in.
Yeah, and it's asymmetrical is what they were telling about.
Ah, cool. I got to learn some more then. So I even scooted down to Woodcraft to get some wooden dowels to use as pins, and I found that when I measured them, they weren't round enough to really get me the kind of precision alignment that I was looking for. So I searched through my junk hardware drawer and I found some metal pins. They're about 2/10 of an inch in diameter and 1 inch long, and they were perfect. I did a couple of experiments to find out the right holes, and I got press fit, perfect alignment. So I was very satisfied with that. So then I put a practice piece up, and drilled the first side. And I got what I was looking for. So I got a rough cut. I got a really smooth finish. I thought I was going to have to do a lot of sanding because there were so many polygons in the heart, but that turned out okay. I got the 2 holes drilled where I wanted. I'm not going to be able to focus close enough, I don't think, but it's really my first V carving of any lettering, and I got it to conform to the shape of the heart. So that turned out all terrific. Then I drilled the 2 corresponding holes in not my spoil board itself, but I strapped another piece of spoil material onto the spoil board, drilled the holes, put the pins in, and then started to do the rough cut on the back. And that's what I got. And that's not what I wanted or was expecting. And gee, it looks like you set the origins wrong, right? Your Z0 is off. No, that wasn't it. To be honest, I'm not exactly sure what it was, but I can tell you what happened. It threw the piece through the window of my garage.
Rich, the pins alone won't hold it down.
You don't say. Well, what happened, I believe that it would actually, but this thing bore itself in 3/4 of the way into the material and then started to move around. So either the wood was going to come up or the bit was going to break. I might have been a better result if the bit broke.
I think you were paying too much attention when I did that a month ago.
Yeah.
Rich, you may have, in one of the settings you're supposed to have at the very beginning is what scheme are you using for zeroing on each side? Are you gonna so when I do a 2-sided, I zero on the same side, which means when I'm doing the first one, I am on the top.
Yes.
But when I flip it over, I zero on the spoil board.
Yes.
So it's the same side.
That is correct. That is the technique I used, and that is what I did. I don't have an origin problem. I don't have a Z0 problem. I believe somebody's clicking a lot. It's driving me cuckoo.
Somebody's typing.
Sorry?
Maybe they're typing.
Or breathing on their microphone or something. It's better. Thank you. There's a setting in the 3D thing where you position the model within the piece of material. And so what I found when I looked at that setting, I don't know if you can see it, but the top, come on, focus, not on me, focus on the thing. You can see the top of the heart is pretty close to the top of the piece of material. And there's actually like 3 or 5 or a 1/2 inch, 3/10, 5/10 of an inch difference between the thickness of the material and the thickness of the heart when it's done. And I believe that what's happened is that the heart was pushed all the way up against the top edge. And so it was actually recessed quite a bit with respect to the center of the material. It wasn't centered. So as a result, when the bit went off to do the rough cut around it, it had to dig in really far, and then it went off at, I don't know, 120 inches per minute or whatever the hell it was, and it was just too deep in to make the cut. Either that or there's something else going on, and I wish somebody would tell me what it is. You can unmute now if you've got the answer.
You need, one thing that you should do is on your tools, check your depth of cut. Okay, on your roughing tool.
Yep.
I don't know if you used a 1/4 inch or whether you used an 1/8 inch.
I used a 1/4 inch roughing tool, and the depth of cut was 1/4 of an inch.
Ooh, you shouldn't have it set that deep if you're gonna do 3D like that.
Ah, okay. How deep?
I only go half. So I use, mine is a 6 millimeter, which is 1/4 of an inch, okay?
Okay.
And my depth is half of the size of my bit.
Half the diameter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now that may or may not solve your problem,
Yep.
but also when you very first start, and I know you're using an acorn board, so I don't know how you do that, but I use Mach. I'm able to, when I very first start, I can take my feeds and slow my feed down 10%, 20%, 30%, so that it'll go in there slow. So if it starts to go off, I can hit stop and doesn't just go right in there fast. That's how I know.
Yeah. Well, by the time I hit stop, the window was already broken.
Right.
And, my wife observed that it was lucky that it was the window and not me, because it probably
Yeah. But you may check to see if your controller acorn, I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
Whether you use a pendant, but see if it allows you to drop your feed down, and then, you know, as it's starting to do what you think it's going to do, you can speed it back up.
Yeah. When I look at the preview in Aspire, it looks okay. That's the peculiar thing. So the piece went through a double pane window and went another 10 feet.
Yeah. And it could be that you just went down too far and that you turned around and didn't have it secured.
Yeah, there's that too.
Because the pins will not hold it.
Rich, I completely agree with Tracy on that very last sentence she said, and what Dave said earlier. With that aggressive of a cut, won't hold it.
Okay.
You can do multiple things. You can put a screw in near the side and have the top of the screw rubbed up against your piece to give a little extra support.
Yep.
Or you could cut into the edge of the piece like with a biscuit joiner, and then have a little toggle going into it and holding down on it. That'll give you some support.
Idea.
Another option is masking tape and super glue. I don't know if you're familiar with that yet.
Tracy taught me that one, and my favorite technique is the double-sided tape.
Yeah.
But by the time I cut this face, there's not a lot of.
You can't do it that way.
There's not a lot. Of, surface left.
I agree with what you're saying. There's not a lot of surface left. One of the things that I've made are pendant lights that hang above my kitchen island. And when I did that, I carved a concave and convex shape, double-sided 3D carving for the lid of the pendant. And when I ended up carving the top before I cut the hole for the light socket to go through, the only part of the lid that was touching my spoil board was a 1/4 inch rim. And all I used was the masking tape and super glue technique. And it flawlessly. Granted, I was only carving, the deepest section was a 1/4 inch, and I was taking shallow passes because I had an idea that what you had happen might happen to me.
Yeah.
But it ended up turning out really well.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even a
So
little bit of hold helps.
I hear you about the hold down, and certainly that would more likely prevent things from flying through the window. So thank you for that. But there's still something, and I haven't figured out yet if it's in the design. Am I telling it to do something stupid, or is the machine doing something stupid on its own?
I think
Yeah,
that,
without seeing your tool paths,
Yeah,
we wouldn't
true.
know. So
Yeah.
I think Tracy had a good point in the beginning too. The aggressiveness of the cut for that big of a block with such a light amount of holding power is a
Mhm.
big thing.
So a quarter of an inch depth cut.
It's a little much for when you only have pins holding it in place.
Okay.
Maybe a lot much.
Well, I appreciate your advice. If it's all right with you guys, I will post my. Oh, those are beautiful.
Those are the pendant lights. So you
Wow.
can see the
Wow, they are nice.
lights there. This kitchen, I remodeled that in 2017.
Did you do the doors?
Yeah, I rebuilt all the cabinetry and everything. We completely gutted our kitchen and started from scratch.
Wow, that's great.
That's spectacular. That's wonderful. Speechless from it. So if it's all right with you guys, I'm gonna post my Aspire file, and if some of you folks with some knowledge of this wouldn't mind taking a look at it to see if I've got some settings wrong.
okay, where are you going to post it?
I'll post it to the SIG.
Okay.
I'll send it out in an email to the SIG.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Oh, but you're using Aspire, right?
Yep.
Can you do a save as and save it in the other format for
As a
VCarve?
file, sure. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, I'm done sharing. Thanks so much. And oh, Jesus, anybody got anything else for a minute? We're already past time.
I don't have anything that's really important. I just had some inlays. I can share them later.
That inlay version 2, that'd be great. Any other pressing business before the board? I found tonight particularly entertaining. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for the invite.
Okay.
Dave, it's
Thank
great.
you, Richard, for putting it on.
Thank Craig. He's the sick guy. I'm just here helping out.
Oh, one question, Rich.
Yes.
You sent out a message saying that there was going to be an in-person on the 29th or something like that.
Yes. So we should do at least a little update about what's happening with the training classes. We did the first intro to CNC class. Many of you attended. Thank you so much for the feedback. Where so many of you said there just wasn't enough material in the class, that we need to pack more in. So we're adding
Right.
about 50%. I'm teasing. Nobody said there was not enough. Everybody said there was too much. So we're gonna edit it back some. Part of that editing process will be to make sure that it sets up the class that's coming next, which is the one that Vince is putting together, which is the toolpath class or the CAM class. Take a simple design in the class, go through all the CAM stuff, generate a toolpath, and we'll see how far we get with that. Maybe we'll get a demonstration cut. Maybe the cutting will come in the third class of the trilogy, which is another class that Vince is working on called Operations and Safety. And the goal is that if you attend all 3 classes, the intro class, the toolpath class, and operations, you'll be eligible to work on the machine under the supervision of a mentor. And the mentor will be either real certified or virtual shop attendants that have CNC experience to share. So that's what we're working on. I'm leaving on vacation. I'll be gone for a month. I was hoping to get another version of the intro class to happen before I left, but that's not going to happen. So it'll have to wait till I'm back in October. In the meanwhile, that class that Tracy just mentioned that's coming up at the end of September will be Vince's pilot class for the toolpaths. And that class will be in person only. One of the things we found was that doing the intro class as a hybrid class was very difficult. and wasn't as satisfying an experience for the folks that were online as the ones that were there in person. Vince, would you like to make a couple of comments about what you got coming?
You're muted.
You're going to have to unmute first.
Unmute.
There you go.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. I got it mostly planned and worked out into PowerPoint, and everybody will need to bring their own laptop with a version of VCarve, free or not, and a 3-button mouse with a scroll wheel.
Yeah, that'll come in handy.
So,
Yeah. But it's starting to take shape. Last I heard is the studio is expecting to get fitted up in October. So after the pilot class, we're expecting that we'll be able to schedule the classes in the studio. There's room, you have heard, allocated in the studio for a CNC machine. The current plan is to put our little guy in that space, and I got an update from Craig today. Things are moving along with respect to the 3x5 machine that we're hoping to inherit from the legacy folks. After some dialogue, there's now going to be a little bit of discussion about what options and extra features we might want to have on that machine. It already comes with rotary access. It comes with vertical work holding. We know one of the things we know we want to add is wheels to make it mobile. I haven't heard what kind of spindle it comes with, so there'll be some discussion with steppers. What kind of class of steppers does it have? So there's some discussion still to be had about the configuration, but nonetheless, the deal appears to be on, and we're excited about that. I didn't get an update about when we might expect the machine, so I'm assuming that we will start training classes with the machine that we currently have, and that's what'll get set up in the studio. And then when the new machine comes, we'll figure out what to do with the second one. At some point, when the studio is reconfigured and all the gear is properly provisioned there, they're going to go back and take a look at, okay, now with the existing bench room, the existing machine room, what kind of tools do we want and how do we deal with the space there? So it's quite possible that we'll end up deploying, my goal is to have both machines deployed. One of them in the studio, primarily for education, and then one of them in the machine shop, primarily for member use once we get a cohort of folks that's interested in spending time on the machine at the guild. So, and that stuff, those 3 classes and getting all that stuff set up will take us through to the end of the year is my expectation. And the next thing on the horizon will be some kind of a design class. I say 90% likely that it'll be in VCarve, and then we got to figure out how to do that. 'Cause I think the design class, I think, may be the most challenging class to put together. But we'll also have had the experience of doing 3 different ones by then, and have taught a few classes, and hopefully that experience will help inform what we want to do with design. So that's what we know.
we got to do some turning and some dovetails too.
Oh, yes. Oh, there is a delightfully long list of topics to do. It's such a versatile machine, and you guys and gals have so much knowledge, and if we can package some of that up and share it with the members, it'll be awesome.
Rich, I believe all of their legacy Mavericks, the 3x5s come with a 2.2 kilowatt or 3 horsepower spindle, water cooled.
Okay.
And I believe the stepper motors are capable of, depending on the software processing speed, I believe up to 600 inches a minute, but Mach 3, if that's what comes with it, keeps it a little bit lower than that.
That's ripping.
Yeah.
Nice.
Its rapids are like zoom, zoom.
Just think of how far you can throw a heart with that.
Yeah.
Hey, Rich, I gotta head out.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Dave, before we run, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that it was a great session.
Okay,
Thank you for
Love
hosting and see you next month.
You bet. Hey, one question before we run. Does anybody have experience with vacuum tables? Vacuum
Yes.
holes? Yeah? Is it a good thing?
Um, it's a little problematic, especially if the surface area of whatever you're trying to hold down is small.
Uh-huh.
You need a pretty substantial vacuum. I did it with a shop vac,
Huh.
but I was using it for, the Scrabble board surface,
Yeah.
16 by 16,
Yeah. Okay.
and it worked fine.
Huh.
I mean,
Okay.
it worked great.
All right, we'll talk.
All right.
Okay. I got a buddy, he just retired. He was in the cabinet making business. He saw my CNC machine. He said, oh, yeah, I just write G code for stuff like this, and you need a vacuum top. So he got me thinking. Anyway, plenty to do. Gentlemen, lovely evening.
Nice
Thank
to meet
you.
y'all. Have a great
Okay.
evening.
Good night.
See you next month. And
Hey, Rich,
sign up for Vince's class.
if, if you got a minute, I wanted to show you.
I'll stick around.
Okay.
Let me stop the recording.
Okay.